Hello, insiders, and welcome to this new episode of the EU Bubble Insider. Our guest today is Anna Coy, the Managing Director of Mavens EU. Anna, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me, Krzysztof. It's a joy to join you.
And also a special welcome from someone from Poland. The second guest from Poland in my on my podcast. The first one was Ryszard Pawlik, who has been a long time member of the team of Jerzy Buzek in the European Parliament. But you've also been quite a while in Brussels, haven't you?
Indeed, this year in September has been 14 years. So when I think about it, wow, I don't know when it passed.
It's quite an impressive term. You are a true EU Bubble insider. But I want to start with the question, what actually came first in your career? Was it HR and recruitment, or did it actually start with the usual, which is public affairs?
Well, so I won't be that original. It started with public affairs and advocacy, although the unusual element might be that I actually have not studied political science as most people in the city. But indeed, when I first came to Brussels, I joined an Italian NGO in helping to set up their Brussels office. I then moved into setting up, actually developing and managing the EU office of another non-for-profit organization and have done advocacy on a European level for quite a number of years before moving to recruitment.
How does it happen? How do you get inspired to shift to hiring your colleagues?
In my case, I guess the credit goes to Jason Decamp, who is the founder of Mavens and who approached me at the time already 8 years ago to start discussing his vision and his project. At the time, he was developing what at the time was called European Affairs Recruitment Specialist. We have since rebranded to Mavens. And I have to say, when he first contacted me about the opportunity, it was obviously very new to me, and I really asked for some time to think about it because I needed to see a little bit in my mind, how that could fit with my ambition and what I wanted to do. It was at a time when I was thinking already about changing and moving into something new. And I realized that it was a fantastic opportunity to try something different, to put myself and push myself a little bit out of the comfort zone, whilst actually staying in the world that I am passionate about, the world of policy, the world of politics, the world of working with people, and the opportunity to get a very diverse and super interesting insight into many different industries.
Why is it important? And how does it help you to have this understanding of the industry that maybe other headhunters don't?
It is very important, and it is very important for a number of reasons, both when we speak to our clients. I'm giving you part that is our pitch, but I really believe that. I think it makes a huge difference when we speak to our clients to be able to actually understand their need, to understand what they're looking for, but also to be able to challenge them at times, because we are there to work hand in hand with them, to be their partner, their advisor. And at times, clients come to us without having a very clear understanding of what specifically is the type of profile they would need, or simply looking for some piece of advice and insight from the market. Maybe more importantly even, it makes a difference when we speak to candidates. As a headhunter, we proactively reach out to candidates to discuss specific opportunities, and we really play a role of sparring partners. So again, we discuss together with the candidates the specific opportunities. We look at the challenges of the opportunities, we consider their profile, and we together reach a conclusion if this is an interesting opportunity for them to consider, but also if there is a match with the candidates, between the candidate's profile and the client's expectations. So that makes a difference because the approach is much more personal. and really brings to the center what for me is crucial, and that is the human interaction. It's not just sharing a job brief, and suggesting that someone reads through it and sends his or her application if they're interested. It immediately becomes a much more humane and personal connection. And I have to say, the feedback that I'm getting from a number of candidates and in the different conversations that I'm having, the image of headhunters is not really a very positive one that is being painted to me. So I've always been surprised, because for me, this is all about human connection, about creating a relationship with the client, but very much so with the candidates. And that has been the center of my approach to the work as well, is really trying to make sure that we essentially treat candidates as human beings, which sounds self-evident, but apparently still is not always the case in terms of keeping people in the loop, providing feedback, communicating, basically.
Yeah, because so do I understand it right that you also see the recruited people as your clients? You have to serve with some level of service rather than only the paying clients.
Sure. I mean, I probably don't necessarily think about candidates from that perspective, although if you think from the business perspective, obviously, candidates that you place in a specific role at times become, or definitely can become, your clients in the future as well. But I think the premise really is that public affairs is a human business. Okay, it's a profession that is really based on creating relationships with others. And I think being able to bring that into our headhunting and recruitment world is very important, because that's really the key thing that creates value. Our job is to create value by bringing together the right opportunity and connecting it with the right person. That's also why part of the DNA of Mavens, and before that European Affairs recruitment specialists, has always been to work with a team of people who are public affairs professionals, either still active or who made the move in their career, but who nevertheless have that background, not only to be able to understand the clients and the candidates, but also to have that natural understanding of the importance of the human dimension in this relationship.
And when you achieve this match, so you find the right candidate and they start a job, how do you know if you did a good job as a headhunter? Like, what's your KPI? How do you, because I can imagine not all hires are successful, but maybe that's to simplify it. How do you assess if you did a good job or not in this field?
Well, of course, the most immediate KPI that you can look at is, whether the person stays in the job for a little bit longer than a few months. We do have in our services and structure elements to monitor that, but also to ensure that we support our clients if that is not the case. It doesn't happen often that the placement is not successful, because we really put a lot of attention into considering the personality match as well as the professional match when we recruit. Now, I would say in terms of the KPI that I look at, beyond how long a person stays in the role, is to see if you can really see them thrive. And when they move on, if we stay in touch, if the connection is there, and we see that both sides are happy and are thriving by improving how they do the job, if it's an organization, and by growing as a professional in their career, if it's a candidate we've placed.
And I think to make those connections work well for especially the organization, you also have to understand what are the most desired and needed skills right now on the market. Did that actually change over the years, or are you recruiting exactly for the same job as you did 10 years ago? Because my experience, coming from, of course, the public relations and public affairs field, but being fascinated by the digital side of communication, my experience is that the Brussels Babber is very slow in adapting new and innovative ways of doing almost anything. So what's your take on that?
Well, it's probably following its own dynamic, indeed. Not always at par with the private sector or other industries. But there has been an important evolution that we have seen over the last 10 years, inevitably and definitely. And that's, by the way, not driven by COVID, but we have been seeing a number of changes already before that. If I look at senior appointments, we accompany a lot of organizations on the kind of leadership transition processes. So when we recruit, for example, director generals or CEOs for associations, the change and the shift in what organizations are looking for in terms of the profile is pretty clear. There is much stronger focus being put now on people management and leadership skills and what we would call organizational design and management skills. So definitely moving away from hiring someone who is essentially a technical expert and excellent in understanding a specific policy area for the role of the director general, and looking rather for someone that obviously will be able to grasp the sensitivities of the industry and understand the topics you're working on as an organization, but that will bring these other skills on board, being able to look at the team, look at the organization, understand if there are changes that should happen on the organigram level to adapt to the evolving policy priorities and agenda, how to keep people motivated, inspired, how to keep people on board, but also if there are needs, for example, if you're an association, to diversify revenue streams, to modernize a little bit the approach in terms of serving the members. These are really the skills that on the leadership level are gaining a lot of traction, and we've seen it there for a number of years now. In terms of broader profiles and looking at the skill set that is needed and the evolution of the skills that are needed, what is really being appreciated more and more, and that again is a result of the evolving policy agenda, is the ability to connect the dots and to get out of your specific policy niche to see how it links to other industries, to other policy areas, or how the situation in Brussels, in the EU, is connected, dependent, or influencing the situation globally. That is related very simply to the fact that more and more policy discussions bring together very different industries, very different policy areas together, that 10 years ago, no one would have put one next to the other. And now it's needed to be able to connect it. Example could be the impact that actually digital and tech is playing in other industries,
across
from
industries,
financial services, exactly, to automotive or any other. And finally, to kind of link back to your comment around digital and communication, the types of skill set, the type of skill set that is being looked after and sought after for communications profiles in Brussels has also changed quite a lot. It used to be very much writing a press release, reaching out to the local media, sending out the press release or the position papers to the stakeholders on the institutional side of things. And I'm slightly exaggerating, but roughly speaking. Nowadays, I think many organizations, both corporates, associations and consultancies, think tanks and NGOs as well, by the way, realize that they need what I call essentially corporate communication skills, but with a political and policy twist. And that's simply the need to engage with a much broader group of stakeholders, the broader public, other businesses and industries, and not only regulators and policymakers when working on your specific policy objectives and advocacy campaigns.
Anna, when you speak about those roles and skills needed, you speak more about senior roles, and obviously headhunters are rather looking for senior roles than juniors. But from the candidate's perspective, who's strategically thinking about his career, when is the good point to try to make contact with a headhunter? In the what's the best moment to do that?
It's true that the majority of roles that we recruit for are at the senior level, either leadership or, let's say, director level, whatever that means nowadays in Brussels anyway. There has been a big inflation of titles. So, but yes, the reality of things is that headhunters are usually called to help recruit for senior roles. Now, personally speaking, I really don't think, it's ever early enough to connect with a headhunter or to reach out to the headhunter. Our approach at Mavens has always been to engage with young talent and young professionals as well, for a variety of reasons and for a range of reasons. Firstly, we are all professionals and we all should have the right and the same access to advice and to support when it comes to thinking strategically about our careers. We've been engaging with partners and participating to initiatives and events where we advise young professionals on how to better structure their CV or how to approach their career from a more strategic perspective. But to be honest, also the market is so dynamic that even if you have 4 or 5 years of experience, you should be thinking about your next step. And it is also very possible that your next step will be, a mid-senior level role. So reaching out to headhunters, understanding how to work with a headhunter, how to be in touch with a headhunter is quite important throughout your career.
And how do I do that? How do I, if I'm in my late 20s or early 30s, have some experience already, how do I become friends with Brussels top headhunters?
Well, in our instance, we're a very transparent bunch. Transparency has always been really the core of what we do, both when we recruit in posting vacancies online, but also just being very available and approachable. So you can find names and contact details of our team members on our website. We are there on LinkedIn. It's relatively easy to reach out, drop an email or a message. We also have a tool on our website that allows everyone to essentially drop their CV with a note to signal if they would like support, if they would just like to be considered or have a chat. We can't obviously every single day immediately respond and speak to everyone who might be interested, but we make sure to have dedicated time every week to look at these spontaneous contacts and make sure that we speak to professionals to understand how we can help, to also understand what they're looking for, so that we can then make sure that we connect them and connect with them when the relevant opportunity comes up.
If I would be planning to send you my CV, what are the red flags I should avoid? What would make you think that I may be unemployable after looking at my profile?
I don't know if there is such a thing as being unemployable, and there is definitely not, one solution fit all or one way to go about it. What is key, I would say, for any professional that is sending their CV to a headhunter or simply applying for a job is to make sure that you're coherent with information you put on your CV and that one can find, for example, on your LinkedIn profile. Because if there are big inconsistencies, that is a red flag and that raises a lot of questions. Yeah. So I'm not saying word by word the same text, but key information should be aligned and coherent. And that's definitely something. And I would also, at the risk of becoming a bit boring, but I keep bringing back the word human, and I think we really need to keep or start bringing back human to human resources for headhunters, but also as a candidate. Remember that you're messaging a human being and just be genuine in what you're asking for or what your interest is. So don't send the same email, in a very impersonal way to all the different headhunters on the team, because that doesn't give me a sense that you're seriously treating your own profile and yourself as a professional and actually want to have a conversation. It feels like, it's an automated thing. And that, I think, is really the core thing. If you're reaching out on LinkedIn, if you're dropping me an email, just be genuine about your need and what you're looking for. And that helps also in, being actually contacted back for a conversation.
When you talk to candidates about transitioning to the new role, what's the usual advice you give them about preparing for the transition, or are there any common challenges people face when joining a new team, leaving the previous role without burning bridges, of course? So what's your take on that?
I think it depends on the specific situation, and if we're talking about someone who's already entering into a new role because they changed jobs, or if it's someone who's kind of considering and looking for new opportunities, right? So if someone is still applying to change and kind of considering a move, one thing that sometimes is challenging for public affairs professionals, especially ones that are what we would call a generalist, is that we all feel like we could do plenty of different things, and wherever you put us, we'll be fine. The challenge is to actually narrow that down and identify what is it that you want to be doing. For your own mental health, I think, but also just for the conversation with the potential future employer. Organizations in the era of quite some volatility on the job market and candidate market really want to make sure not only that they hire someone who has the right skill set in terms of what they are looking for and expecting, but also that they're hiring someone who actually is excited about that opportunity and wants to do that job, and not someone who's looking for just something or a change and might leave in 3 months' time because they find something better. So that is quite something that I think is important and that I would definitely keep in mind. Now,
Just a quick question on top of what you said. Do you often meet candidates who are not fully aware of how powerful their experience may be on the market? How important they may be for the possibly looking for organizations looking out for new hires?
It happens. I think sometimes what happens is that when people have very specific experience in one industry, for example, or in one sector, they don't immediately see that their experience and profile could actually be super relevant for a different industry, which could offer an interesting change also in terms of professional perspectives for them. So that is one thing that we often discuss with people, just to try and open their horizon in terms of the types of opportunities they're considering and looking for.
That's a very good point. I asked this question because I have this experience with a friend of mine who was discussing with me a new role. So without sharing any details, I can say that his experience in the bubble is working for, let's say, difficult industries, the industries that are unpopular and face some really challenging situations. And he was just transitioning to a new role in a different industry because he actually changed industries already 3 times, I think. And he told me that he's not feeling confident about this new industry because he'll be meeting all the time new challenges, new people, different areas of expertise. But I actually told him one thing, but listen, aren't you the specialist in this type of industries? And doesn't this make you, really an added value to whatever they need you to do? And I remember that reflection struck him as something like, yeah, you're right, really. This is my, I'm the guy for the really tough work. So yeah, maybe sometimes you just need someone from the outside to look at you guy. I mean, listen, you are really good at something.
For sure. And that's also why I think it's a healthy exercise to talk to a headhunter, even if you're not necessarily very actively looking for a new job, because it can just open a little bit the horizons and the thinking patterns. Now, I think it's that ultimately boils down to identifying that core thing that will be your thread as well, and that can change, right? You could be coming from a career in difficult industries, as you said, and you would want to shift to now use also that knowledge to, for example, support the work of an NGO. I'm not saying it's always an easy transition, because sometimes it's not. And in some instances, it's also about admitting, okay, at least in the immediate term, it might not be feasible, especially if the change that we're looking for is quite radical. but it doesn't mean that you don't have the right skill set and that you cannot profile yourself for a specific opportunity in a completely different organization or industry.
And I'd like to change the topic right now. Of course, we are still in the broad recruitment and public affairs space. But now I'd like to ask you, why do you think is diversity such a challenging topic for the Brussels bubble?
You're touching on the big one and something that is close to my heart. So very happy to talk about that. I guess the simple answer, which should be obvious for everyone, is also that the Brussels bubble should be respective and representative of what the European societies look like. I mean, it's a basic business principle as well, right? You want to make sure that you represent your customers, your stakeholders. In this case, it's the same. And the bubble is still not a very diverse environment, I have to say. I mean, the discussion, of course, is present. There are a number of organizations and a number of instances in which the diversity, equity, and inclusion topic is coming up. I feel in Brussels it still is often limited to the gender dimension, which is a very important one. And well, I've been battling throughout most of my professional career for greater gender equity, but it's only one element. And I feel like the others are kind of floating there, but not really approached head on in Brussels. I've seen a couple of initiatives coming up in the recent months, focusing on the other dimensions of diversity, and I think that is important. Of course, the difficulty is that it's difficult to tackle that, and to achieve change and really to achieve a result, we need to change at multiple levels, starting from education, access to opportunities, access to internships, maybe even earlier, who is actually interested in studying, political science and imagining themselves in Brussels, working on developing specific policies through the recruitment processes, of course, as well, and how organizations approach building their talent pipeline. So it's a very broad topic. But why is it important? It's important because the society is changing, and if we want to create policies that are built for the benefit of the societies, then we need to have all the voices around the table at the source, in a way, at the core, when we build policies.
I, of course, want to ask you about how much does this topic, how big is the role this topic plays in your conversations with clients and the briefs you receive. But before I do that, you mentioned also the access to education, and that touches on something that has always been important for me, as I also remember how difficult it was when I was starting out. What is your opinion? I'm sure I know what is your opinion, but what solutions do you see to the fact that Brussels is still offering a lot of opportunities to launch your career in internships that are totally unpaid, which makes them absolutely inaccessible for someone who cannot afford life and support by themselves a life in one of the most expensive cities in Europe?
I guess the answer is quite simple. Unpaid internships should be illegal, and that is my position. I think it's been clear for a very long time already that these are not internships where you make photocopies and prepare coffees. Internships in the bubble are internships where you're essentially doing the job. Yes, of course, you're a junior professional, so you're learning and you're benefiting from that as well. But organizations are benefiting enormously from the work that the interns bring with them and provide as well. And oftentimes, and I've seen it myself with our interns, we don't even realize the value that young professionals can bring, because these are the people that bring the fresh ideas and skills also when it comes to digital communication, new ways of working, new ways of engaging with different stakeholders. So yes, of course, different organizations have different financial means, but unpaid internships should be illegal, and that would be one concrete step in that direction. Then, of course, plenty of other things that need to be done in order to attract more diverse talent to this city.
And I think that it also creates a more healthy relationship for both sides. You have, you don't have to pay an intern the full range of a full-time salary. It's not about that. It's about just, making it a little bit more, as you say, legal and also ethic. And if you have this relationship of actually sending out a salary at the end of the month, you feel more entitled as the organization, as the manager, to just expect something from the intern, because obviously they have to learn things, but they also have to be on time. They have to be try to be professional and so on. So there are plenty of advantages. Just that's what I wanted to say for anyone who would be listening to us and considering a change in policy. Anna, now back to your relationships with clients, because I'm sure that you're also trying to preach the advantages of looking for a more diverse mix of candidates. How does that work out in practice?
We do. And we do that. This is a point of conversation with most of our clients, being brought up either by the client themselves or by us. I think the reality of things, of course, is very nuanced and really depends on the specific need the client has. In some instances, the reality is it's difficult to ensure diversity, even on the shortlist, unless we go beyond Brussels and we are allowed to look for candidates that have a bit of a broader profile when it comes to their professional experience. And some clients are very open to that. I think more and more organizations are also realizing that it is important, oftentimes also just necessary to do that. Now, sometimes we are not. We have to operate within the brief that still sticks to a certain type of experience in Brussels as being mandatory. And in many instances, it is justified by the specific need that the client has. So it is a very dynamic discussion that we're having with the client, of course, and we're always putting that forward, also trying to ensure that if the brief is restrictive to Brussels, we are at least looking at a broader range of candidates across different sectors, which is a practice that we always implement to ensure we don't miss potential candidates that might be high potential, that can have relevant and interesting profiles for our candidates, even if they come from a different industry or their experience is a little bit broader than the kind of ideal candidate brief.
Around the discussion about diversity, there's also the discussion, should it be something that is regulated or should it be something that happens naturally? So really the best candidates are given the chance to excel. Do you have an opinion on that? Like, would a specific regulation on how diversified workforce should be help in any way, or is that not the good way to go from your perspective?
It's not an easy point because, of course, we could look at the discussion around quotas, for example, and the opinions are divided. People are pro or against. The reality of things is that I might not be a huge fan of quotas, but it led to some changes. And I tend to agree with the opinion that sometimes we need a certain level of imposed regulation in a way in order to kickstart the change and to start creating a new setup in which, for example, having more diverse teams, having more women being represented across different seniority levels is just normal in organizations, is creating role models for others, which is very important, crucial, in fact, in attracting young talent into the different roles and building the pipeline. Now, the complexity of it when it comes to Brussels in the current situation is precisely the talent pool available, if we want to use the more kind of business terminology here. So you can try to impose on organizations a certain level of diversity, but if we don't have enough candidates with the specific profile available and the elements of diversity as well, it will just not be feasible, right? Where I also am cautious when it comes to regulation is I really would not want to end up in a situation where we have, a token employee that ticks the diversity box. And that's why I suppose ultimately my answer would be I would really prefer that organizations work with partners that can support them on developing specific policies internally to foster a more diverse culture, but maybe without imposing quotas. Not to mention, and this is a result of a conversation with a number of people who are active in different organizations supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do you measure success when it comes to having a diverse workforce? It's not by being able to say, oh, I have one employee who is, boom, I have one employee who is diverse from that perspective, because these are token employees oftentimes. And also, this is not really a change, because when that employee leaves, you're no longer diverse potentially, right? It's about creating a culture and an environment in which people with very diverse profiles feel fulfilled and feel like they are treated at the same level as equals, feel they can be themselves. Not everyone wants to be out there manifesting their diversity aspect. And we should not be forcing anyone to do so.
You also don't want to be the person known that you are employed in this position because someone needed to fill the quota. That's like, I don't think anyone would be willing to have this, tag name on their
obviously not
shoulder.
But that's the big discussion. That's the big discussion also with quotas. That then you have, for example, women, and not only, but the whole discussion. Oh, she was hired because she's a woman, or I don't want to be hired because I'm a woman. Although studies actually show, for example, when it comes to quotas on corporate boards, that the overall quality of board members has gone up since the introduction of the quotas. That's because women candidates go through higher criteria to get to that position, and that elevates the overall quality because you have the higher level men and women in terms of expertise and profiles, obviously, that form the board, therefore elevating the overall quality. And that is a similar consideration that we could make when it comes to diverse teams. Now, yet another element is that we often feel, oh, I'll just bring a very diverse bunch of people together and we're good, it's going to work great. That is a myth when it comes to diversity. Diversity often takes, at the starting point, a little bit more work and definitely a very mindful approach in order to make it a success. So it's also not just bringing a very diverse group of people together and off we go. It's about being mindful as a manager, or training your managers if you're an organization, to be able to leverage the value of a diverse workforce.
Well, my very personal take on the entire topic here is that, considering how developed our society is, I just can't believe that this is still something we have to discuss at all. And I'm not a very big fan of regulating that kind of things for many reasons, but I believe that what can lead to a change long term is just talking about it as much as possible. So that's why I try to also include it. If you watch the past episodes of the podcast, you will see that this topic has been there for a couple of times, and I just try to talk about it as much as possible. Anna, when I was preparing for this interview, I looked at the Maven's website, and I saw that there also exists something called the Maven's Advisory. Does that mean that the business model of your business is also evolving because of different market expectations?
I would say we keep growing and we keep evolving. And the beauty for me of Mavens is also that we listen to our clients and to the market, and we can, in a very dynamic way, build a response and try to make sure that we support our clients across the board. Maven's Advisory is precisely that. It's a response to a market need. So more specifically, Mavens is a headhunting firm, and the core of our business is recruitment and headhunting. But with COVID in particular, that has somehow, I would say, exacerbated that and further highlighted the challenges that many organizations have with keeping talent on board, not just recruiting. And so we started developing a host of services and host of tools to support our clients, not only with the recruitment side, but also with actually keeping people happy, which I realize might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but for me is yet again bringing that human element into it. It's not sustainable to be changing your employees and hiring every 2 months. Not sustainable for the organization, but also not sustainable for a headhunter, to be honest, especially if you're operating in a niche market such as government affairs or public affairs. So that has been, or sort of a beginning of Maven's Advisory, which at the time was not yet branded that way. And we started with looking at the talent management aspect of it, providing our clients with support, such as employee satisfaction surveys or individual coaching programs, some team workshops facilitation. Now that has become a more structured offering and is now Maven's Advisory, as we have also included into that and integrated a structured governance and organizational support to organizations that really want to look at their organigram or their business model, or that are looking at setting up their presence in Brussels. So I'm very happy that we have a colleague who joined us earlier this year, Claudia Breuer, who's running Maven's Advisory and really focusing on developing and delivering that service to our clients. And the idea here is ultimately to elevate the quality of government affairs as a function and to support our clients in ensuring that the basis is solid and is there, not only to deliver a good job when it comes to advocacy and government affairs, but also to building a very strong talent pipeline, hiring the right talent and keeping people in the organization satisfied and professionally fulfilled.
It's a very good word leading up to my next question, because I wanted to ask you about your personal take on work satisfaction and also work-life balance. If this is something, when you hear the word work-life balance, is this something you have a good grasp of? Is this something that you focus on a lot? And if yes, what's your take on that?
It is a very important element. It's true that in a world of public affairs where most people are very passionate about the topics they work on, specific policy areas, industries, but also where there is always something happening, the key thing becomes to actually be able to somehow guard yourself and put a bit boundaries in terms of how long you work or when do you say stop. Now, fortunately, I think both on individual candidate side, but also on the organizational side and client side, there is a growing, and there has been a growing realization of the importance of maintaining a good work-life balance. It has, of course, been further strengthened by our experience during the pandemic, by the realization that we can do a lot by working remotely. Although, I have to say, candidates in public affairs, in most instances, want to have an office and a team, and they want to have a place where they can go to interact with others and to work with others. Yes, flexibility and the work-life balance are crucial. It is, I think, now really, if not the first, then the second question that we hear, oftentimes way, before discussing salaries. And it's the environment, the kind of vibe and working culture in an organization when it comes to human interactions. And it is work-life balance and flexibility. But it is a flexibility that, again, is accounting for the fact that we all have more than our jobs in lives. And therefore, a certain day, we may want to work half a day from home and then be in the office the rest of the day, or be able to manage the different priorities that we have in life. And have the right to disconnect and understand that there are times where we are off.
I think, from the mental health, and, we already understand that after the time of COVID, from the mental health point of view, having an office that you go to and then leaving that office and actually going home, which is a place for relaxing, having time with your family, with your close one, is very important. And that leads me to the question about, if you especially look on the social media timelines and topics that are discussed. I often see people talking about burnout, about discovering how damaging a wrong approach to your work hygiene can be. Do you see this as an important part of the Brussels bubble ecosystem? I'm asking this because there are 2 points to view how work gets done in Brussels bubble. First is the institutions where you often have people not being available after 5, and Friday after lunch is already everyone's gone. But then also you have the consulting world where jobs are very much beyond 9 to 5. So what's your perspective on this?
I think to some extent we have seen a push that has been strong enough from the candidate side as well, that has shifted a little bit the dynamics, and simply people don't want to work in organizations that constantly ask them to do overtime and to work on the weekends. It doesn't mean that there is zero flexibility. And I really think we are, myself included, but we all are quite lucky in that sense, being in the public affairs world, that, as I said earlier, most people are quite excited and interested in the topics they work on. If they're not, they are very vocal or very kind of determined to change that. But in principle, it is the type of a job where people can get interested and excited about the topic. So in most instances, they also understand that this is the type of work that at times requires flexibility, requires going the extra mile and staying a bit longer, or working over the weekend to prepare for a big event or something coming up. Now, again, that brings us back to flexibility and actually balance in understanding that you give and you take, right? It's that realization that we all should be flexible, including the employers, in understanding that it's not about milking out your employees every single day, asking them to do overtime. But because that need is being manifested across seniority levels, it's really not just, the Gen Z saying, oh, we don't want to work after 5 or before 10 a.m. Honestly, yes, there are generational changes, but the need for greater work hygiene and work-life balance is visible and manifested across seniority levels. meaning simply that it's also the senior people who are leading the organizations that appreciate greater work-life balance. So in many organizations, that has created a more natural dynamic to say, we have actually introduced specific policies for people to make sure they take time off, to make sure they can disconnect, to give them the opportunity, and if possible, be flexible and accommodate that maybe they want to take a longer period of time altogether as a holiday because they are not from Belgium, from Brussels, or because they have a specific need.
Anna, last question. Do you think we will ever have a 4-day work week in Brussels?
I think it would be interesting, and I would be looking forward to that. But I also think because of the character of the work that we have, it would not be that straightforward because there are always things happening. So then it ultimately would be very much down to individual persons' work dynamics in a way. But it's an option. And I think actually we underestimate often how much we are able to do in a shorter period of time. If we all moved to a 4-day work week, then I think it could work very well. So who knows? Something to look forward to.
And we both know that there's a bunch of people in Brussels who already live the dream of a 4-day work week anyway. So maybe let's just follow the early adopters. Anna, thank you very much for this conversation. It was very insightful, and I'm sure that our listeners and viewers will value your insights of a insider view of both your job but also the industry, career insights. So I'm really happy we were able to have this conversation. Thank you very much, and to our listeners, thank you for being with us today. Anna Koy, the Managing Director of Mavens EU, was our guest today.
Thank you for
Anna.
having me and for a great conversation.